Views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Welcome to Moments of Strength. I'm your host, Mary Kaufman. In this show, we dive deep into the lives of mothers' unique journeys of parenting and personal growth. From juggling family dynamics to personal passions and career ambitions, we'll talk about challenges, triumphs, and pivotal moments that shape their lives, emphasizing the resilience and strength that comes with motherhood. Today's guest is Kristle. Welcome, Kristle.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and helping me with the show.
Absolutely.
So the aim of the show really is to provide support and resources to mothers through storytelling and life experiences. So the show runs about an hour, and we'll talk a little bit about who you are and who you are as a mom and then as an individual, and we can take that path however it goes. And then before we wrap up, I'll just give you an opportunity if we haven't covered something that you think could be helpful to other moms, either women aspiring to be moms or people who are in the middle of it. Again, the aim is really to give resources and help. So that's what we'll be doing. So welcome.
Good deal. Thank you.
Okay, so I've known you, for
goodness.
sure a decade.
Yes, for sure. Yeah,
For sure a
because our
decade.
boys were
They were
crawling.
so little,
Yes.
during dance
Yes.
with the girls. And so there was a time we got in a little bit of trouble. Remember, we were asked to be quiet. I thought about that this morning before you came. So, just run into you here and there, but your life has taken a journey just through your job and traveling with that. So I'd love to talk about that. But if you just want to start out and tell us who you are, you can start from anywhere in your life. Some people start from very early on, but start anywhere and just introduce yourself.
Yes. So I'm Kristle Bolins, and I've been in Sun Prairie for, since 2007?
Okay.
No, before then, I think. Doesn't matter. A while.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, and I feel finally like official Sun Prairiean.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm married. I've been married for 18 years, but I have been with my husband for 24. So
Long
I was
time.
a little baby when I met him. And we have two kids. Aspen, she's 15. She's a sophomore. And Ryder, who is 11, and he is in 6th grade.
Okay.
I'm originally from Green Bay, and left, after high school, did a little bit of college, was not really my jam, and moved in with my godmother for a while in Iowa, and that's where I met my husband, and then moved to Madison, and the rest is kind of history. So, yeah.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a younger brother. He is 30. He just turned 30. So pretty substantial age gap, but it's just the two of us. But despite the age gap, we're very close, very close. He's always been like, my best buddy.
Yeah,
so
that's so nice to have.
Yeah.
And Green Bay, so Packer fan.
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
your
Die
posts.
hard. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm counting down the minutes until Thursday when we play the Lions. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so two kids, and you did a little bit of college, and then did you get married after that, or?
We were together. Well, I was 19 when I met my husband, and so we dated for like 6 years.
Okay.
So we got married when I was like 25.
Okay.
Yeah. So as far as the college, when I went to UWGB, and it just wasn't the right fit for me, which. I'm so glad to see now as things are evolving. We're definitely seeing, I feel like, a shift in that mindset that you have to have a 4-year degree in order to get a job. I think any path is a good path as long as you're working hard and you're improving yourself and learning. And you know, there is not one path for everybody. I did go to MATC. I have 4 credits left before I would get.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But it's all math, and I am not a math-minded person. So
Yes, I know a few people like that. So.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting now in my career is I work with a lot of students in the trades, and so it's really neat to be able to share my story. That you know, like you can have a very lucrative, happy, good career. You know, whatever path you want to take. So, and in fact, during COVID, I did this virtual. Sort of like a regional meetup with a bunch of women on a board that I'm on, and we started talking about our life experiences. And I shared the fact that I didn't have a college degree, and that's something that I've struggled with, and admitting it because it's something that I've been, you know, embarrassed or shameful about. And it was so cool because afterwards there was probably 3 or 4 women that reached out to me and said, I'm in the same boat. And thank you for speaking that, because now it gives me more of a voice to be able to say, you know, that doesn't define me. So.
Yeah, and you don't feel like you're the only person with this thing that you think has a stigma.
Right.
And I think you're right. You know, back when you went to college, there was sort of some predictable paths.
Yes.
I mean, not for everybody, but here, you know. And it's not for everybody. And I mean, I love school, but I love school. So that is something that.
Right.
But when I went to get my first degree, I wasn't in the mental state. You know, my parents were just like, this is where you go.
Yeah, this is what you do.
And it was fine. And it was a great time. And then I had to learn to balance all the things. But so it's not for everybody. And I'm learning that too with my own kids. You know, the plan really is for them to go to school, but even as they do, and even the way school is set up now, for college, we all have experiences doing things virtually. So, you know, do you have to go live there? That's for some people. Do you want to stay home? So there's so many more options now. And you're right. Everybody has their own path, and it doesn't have to be judged one way or the other, you know, by somebody who has a different path. So,
well, and I think, you know, because even as we look at elementary schools, for example, and when my kids were little, I volunteered a fair amount in the schools, and I saw the evolution of even the different seats. You know, kids got to sit on the bouncy balls or the, you know, other kind of sensory seats, or maybe some kid
beanbag or
couch.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's on a much smaller scale, but it's the same sort of concept that, you know, these kids are learning in different ways. And so let's find the way that works for them to make them successful. And it doesn't have to be this way or that way. So I think, you know, that is sort of, it's the same kind of concept.
Yes.
So,
so that's nice to have met some people who, you know, sort of give you some relief about that, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't carry that anymore. You know, I'm really proud of what I've done and been able to do. And, you know, I find myself a very intelligent person, and I love learning. But yeah, it's just a different way.
So, you know, what's funny about you carrying that around is, so we met.
Yeah.
You know, I never was thinking like, I wonder, you know, did Kristle finish school?
Yeah.
But here, and we do that
just
as individuals, as moms, you know, as women, as whoever. When we're around other people, we're very often wrong about what they're thinking because we're projecting what our insecurities are on them. And I've known you for so long now and just learned that about you, and that it doesn't change anything.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So,
so that's just interesting to know that.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of the wisdom of age is, you know, that whole idea of, you know, if they really knew me, maybe they wouldn't really like me, is so not, I mean, there's just no validity to that, you know?
Yes.
They do know you, you know, of what you're, you know, putting out into the, as a friend and into the universe, I guess, is like they, you know, that's what they see, not you know,
Right.
if you finish college or.
We're so worried about, you know, what we're projecting.
Yes.
It does, I think there, you know, are a percentage of people who embrace who they are and they go into the world like that, and many people are discovering who they are and they can't quite project it because they're worried about what people think. But there is something so liberating about just realizing, wait a minute, this is who I am. Hey, people like me.
Yeah.
People have been interacting with me and enjoying that for a long time, but it took me a long time to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, oh man, I could dive into that for hours, but because I've had so much, that's been part of my journey over that, I would say, you know, especially having kids, because I think the one thing about having children is, and you don't know this until you're in it, is it brings all your stuff to the surface, and it brings all of these things that you didn't even know that you haven't dealt with, or things that you know you haven't, you know, worked through or processed, and it brings it right to the surface.
Yes.
And so, you know, I'm a little bit, I would say, a chaotic person a little bit, right? Like it's just who I am, and I'm always late. Hence this morning. Like it's just, and it's not that I don't have respect for people's time. It's just it's unfortunately who I am, and I try very hard.
I have a similar trait for that. It's you have all the best intentions,
really
but then
do.
it's like if I could just switch that load of laundry quickly before, and it's misjudged time.
Exactly,
So.
misjudged time. Exactly. And I think, you know, after I had Aspen, my daughter, I was very rigid and everything had to be exactly this way. And for me, it was a way of masking some of this chaos that was going on inside of me. And so I was, you know, wanted to portray that I had all of these things together, and I knew exactly what I was doing, and in reality it was just really kind of
what did that feel like inside while you were doing that? Were you buying into it yourself? Sometimes we can sell ourselves on something.
I think a little bit. Definitely. I mean, because you kind of have to, if that's what, like, the lifestyle you're going to lead. And I think I also surrounded myself with people that also were very kind of rigid in that way.
We must have met after that.
And, you know, the thing is that the people that really I cared about and loved and, you know, didn't like that, you know, that was that was uncomfortable. That was, it made them feel less than or inferior because I projected this way of being that had everything together and, you know, I had all the answers, and I wasn't a person that people necessarily wanted to be around.
Well, because you weren't being you.
Because it wasn't being me.
Yeah.
I wasn't being a whole person, you know, and and then I had Ryder, and that just
an intervention.
Exactly.
Because I remember being at dance too, and he was he just had a mind of his own, and he was so, like, a lot of energy, but I mean, it was happy energy, and it was he did not. He had to come and watch his sister dance. It's like in a small confined space. That's not for everybody.
He just marched to his own drum, and you know, I always, like, by the time Ryder was 1, I felt like he taught me more things about myself and about the world than I had learned in the 32 years prior to having him. Like, he was definitely such an eye-opener about, you know, who I really wanted to be as a mom and who I wanted to be in the world, and you know, making adjustments on, well, maybe not adjustments, but not worrying so much about what people thought of me as a mom, if that makes sense, you know, like.
Well, he became your priority, essentially. Over all of those things you were trying to do.
Exactly.
And if you're parenting a free-spirited child like that, you cannot be rigid, because it just doesn't work.
No.
So you have to sort of adapt to what they. You don't have to give them all the power. I have a child like that too, and I did for a while. But you don't have to do that. But you do have to adjust, because they're trying to be themselves
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's also pretty interesting because Ryder is my mirror. I mean, he's very much like me.
It's very hard to
Yeah.
parent yourself.
Yes.
Ooh,
Yes. Yeah. But as we're moving from, being a little boy into tween and soon to be a teen, he's very relatable to me and vice versa. So like we have a very special connection because I can really understand. I really get him. I really get it, and in a way that no one else can.
Right.
And I think that makes him feel very safe.
Sure.
And that's my number one goal as mom. Just make my kids feel safe.
Well, and it feels very good if you have somebody who understands you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So that whole parenting yourself, those first probably 10 years, you have to be in it for the long haul. Yeah. If you're parenting yourself, if you have a child that is mirroring you or you recognize yourself in that, I often used to say, I want to hang out with her. I don't want to parent her.
Yeah.
I love that. Society says no. You know?
Yeah.
So I was forced to move that within boundaries, but then what that's saying is like, you also have to operate within the boundaries. And if you're like that child and that's their thing, now you have to constrain yourself.
Yeah.
And it's, but if you do the work, if you stay up at night, if you are there for them when it's hard for them and you're not breaking them, because I think there's some feeling as a parent where you just want to be able to manage it and they don't know how to manage themselves and you don't want to break it.
Yeah.
And if you can just gingerly try to get through those years supporting them, putting yourself in their shoes and still having to be the authority to some extent, after the 10 years, that person is you. So now you have this kindred spirit who now knows a little bit how to manage themselves and is interacting with the world, and you can have conversations with them that they get you too, and that's the gift. And
yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, the gift, absolutely. Because, I would say I have a hard time regulating my emotions, and that's my son very much. And it's certainly something we're all working on. But when I have those moments where I can't regulate myself and I go to recover with him, he is, immediately is, forgives.
Yes.
And it's not that he is a, doormat, but he's like, yeah, I get it. You were frustrated and, I left my book bag on the floor for the 100th time and, so it's all good. I would have done the same thing. Yeah. So that is really, to have that sort of compassion from your kid. That's just, that doesn't, that just gets it.
Yeah,
just gets
it's
it.
not perfect by any means. I mean, it is a tough road.
Yeah.
I think parenting in general is a tough road.
Yeah.
Some kids are tougher than others, but the ones who aren't tough, you have to maybe dig in a little more, and so the work is always going to be there. It just is different. And then you have to make sure that for the kids that aren't outwardly trying to engage with you, either positively or negatively, figuring out what's going on in the heads of those kids and don't let them, sort of fall in the background. And
Yes.
if you have multiple kids, that's hard to do because if somebody's agreeable, it's like, they're okay.
Yeah.
Because the one who isn't agreeable is sort of taking on the spotlight.
Yeah. And then as, because I have one of each, then you send the agreeable kid out into the world and now they're a people pleaser and saying yes to things that maybe they don't necessarily want to say yes to, or just, going with the flow. And, I've had to teach my daughter to find her voice and to stand up for herself and, when it's appropriate to not go, with the grain. And, so that's a challenge too. So,
Because if they weren't constantly building that muscle of, just banging against the wall, then when that comes up, that can be just so overwhelming. Such a big deal. And then you have to regulate as a parent, like, it might seem like, well, that's just but to them, this is their new big challenge.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So yeah, it's you said having kids is certainly the most difficult thing that I've ever done. But it's, the one thing I absolutely would never regret doing.
It's the best.
It is the best. It really is. It really is. But ask me, last night at 8:00, I wouldn't say it's
You're like, this is the best. The most challenging time. Yeah. Actually, if you could remember to say that, it'd probably be a little easier.
Yeah.
You might begin to question it.
Yeah, probably. Like, you're a liar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of hard things and parenting and being
Yeah.
an individual, so college wasn't a thing. So then you went into your first job. How did that go?
Yeah.
What was that path?
Well, I mean, I I got my first job and stayed there for 21 years. So
a match.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first career.
Yeah.
Right. Like I worked at
Move within there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I worked at Walmart, and I don't know if I can say the names of places.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Applebee's, and
kind
things
of those
like that.
first jobs for you.
Yeah. But then my first like big girl job, and then I stayed there for 21 years. Started as a customer service rep, and then ended up as a senior director over North America. So,
That escalated quickly.
Yeah.
No, that's so great.
Yeah.
So during that time, so when I met you, you were working traditional hours, right?
Yeah.
There was that you were trying to decide, were you going to take the job that was going to have you traveling while the kids were there? And that is, I just want to, if we could talk about that a little bit, because I think as women, as moms, as people who are trying to have personal growth, but also be there for our children, this is a critical thing for women who have this opportunity.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of adventurous to take that path, but it comes with all sorts of new challenges.
Yeah. And what's interesting, and we can talk, but is that the kids were young, and that seemed like a big challenge. But frankly, it's the demands of the job and travel and things like that. Actually, I feel like are harder now that they're older, because
they're more aware.
They're more aware. They have more activities, more places that they need to be, and their problems are a lot bigger and more significant.
That's a very good point.
So things take longer and more intention and more thought to work through.
Okay.
Than when they were little.
Sure.
But I didn't realize it at the time. But yeah, I mean, I think for me is I've always been really ambitious, and I've had to work hard, but I don't feel like, I don't know, things like that, kind of working hard comes naturally to me, and it's not hard. I don't know how to say that.
I understand this.
Yeah.
You know, and then, so you're a person, so I always talk about mental toughness, but this is what it doesn't mean you can't be mentally tough if you're not that, but that's sort of a hallmark is, I seek out challenge. I thrive doing it. I'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
Emotion is important, but emotion doesn't change my path.
Right.
So that's different than resilience, which is I can get through this. I might not feel great, but I'll come out the other side.
Yeah.
But you have to have some elements of that to balance, what you have going on as a parent and the demands of what people want at work. But if that matches your personality too, which it seems like it did.
Yeah, and I feel like I am, I've made it very clear to my kids from the go that I am my own person, and that I am their mother, and they're my first priority, and all of those things, and I am my own human, and I need to make sure that I protect that. And sometimes that's easy, but it's way easier said than done.
Of course.
and it ebbs and flows where, at times I'm spending more time, work with them or
Sure.
working through things with them. And my career has to kind of take a little bit of a back burner. And sometimes it's vice versa, where it's like, hey guys, this is really important to me as a human. And we need to learn how to adjust and navigate that. Because this is reality. This is life. I mean, and your husband or spouse or partner or whomever, as you grow, friends, they're going to have priorities that they're really important to them. And we need to be able to understand and give space for people to follow their passions and the things that they want to do. Obviously, you don't say that to toddlers because they don't quite get that.
You can. They'll be doing something else.
Yeah. But I've always I want them to understand, like I'm not traveling and doing this because I want to be away from you, but it's, our livelihood. So if you want that, $200, North Face puffer jacket, then someone's got to work around here.
Yeah. No kidding.
But it's important to me as a person, and that, I'm going to offer you the same grace and respect as you grow into what you're doing.
That's so important. I'm so happy you're here to say that, because this is the message. And the message is it's okay to be an individual and be a mom.
Yeah.
And you have to make sacrifices, undoubtedly. But it's important to also still be an individual human person who has priorities. And just the way you phrase that, I appreciate that. I think even when I was working full-time outside the home and 4 kids under 11, and it was crazy, and I got my work schedule adjusted so I could do pickups after school. And I thought the example was conveying the message, right?
Yeah.
This is important to me. Also, that was to a degree maybe, but not what I thought it was communicating. So I love that you verbalize that, because what that teaches your kids, I mean, you grow from that, you get to continually personally grow, but then it teaches your kids that it is necessary to make adjustments for the people that you love.
Yes, yeah.
So that they can pursue something and they can still love you and you're still the priority. But you're really teaching them it's okay to do both, and the fact that you verbalize that. I think, that's something my kids are great about it.
Yeah.
But the difference now is, they don't feel offended that I want to do something for myself, that I work for myself, or that I am going to school, or they know I still make time for them. But I think I sacrificed a lot without verbalizing that. And I'll tell you why, because my youngest, this was a couple years ago, and he asked me one night before bed, he was like, Mom, is it optional to have a job when you get old? I'm like, what? How are you observing anything happening in this house? Everybody's working. And so that was so eye-opening to me too, because I'm like, no, So he plans to, be a pro baller, which fine. But that was just so eye-opening. So I think a lot of times what we think we're communicating by sacrificing and just working ourselves to the bone and never sleeping, and it's not the same message that's being received. And sometimes there's no message being received because kids don't have an awareness all the time of what their parents are doing or feeling or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think I forgot what I was going to say. Shoot.
That's okay. Maybe it'll come back.
Something about being an individual, but I can't remember exactly what that was. But yeah, I mean, it's been, I've traveled their entire life. I mean, both of my kids. I mean, it's I got more intense, after Ryder was older and or after Ryder was born.
Okay.
And when we were first meeting.
Yes.
And now, and Aspen was pretty little, so I mean that's just what they've always known.
Yes.
Now it doesn't get easier. I mean they still miss me a lot, and the energy of the house. Anytime someone's not there,
the
it just
dynamics.
shifts. Yeah. and it's a lot to put on my husband, you know, to be honest. It really is. And he takes it like a champ, but you know, like adjusting his work schedule to make sure that he's home and getting them to where they need to be, and dealing with some of the emotional, like I don't know, hurt, or you know, because they still call me when I'm not there, and he'll be in the next room over. And you know, I think sometimes he's gotten better at it as the years have gone, but I think, you know, initially it's kind of like, well, why are you calling your mom? I'm right here.
Well, a lot of times kids too.
Yeah.
You know, dad's standing right there, but.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, well, I know mom will. Yeah. I know mom will do it for me. No, and sometimes it's like just a different.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Well, yeah. And yeah, I mean, they still do. They still, if Jeremy could be right there and I'm in my office and they're,
yes, that's universally.
Or I hear, where's mom?
This isn't for you. Except you're the only one here now, I realize. Yeah, that's a lot of adjustment for the parent that is at home all the time. Too.
And yeah, I mean, and that, I mean, marriage is a whole other thing, but being able to, that's being able, I think sometimes it's, you get into the mindset of I'm doing more than you, and the comparing, and you know, a marriage is the long game, and so maybe I am doing more than you in this year, but maybe in 2 years, you know, I'm gonna need you to do, you know, more, and I think it all eventually balances out. I think, but another thing about myself, just in general, is I can do a lot, and I function differently than others. And I have to constantly remind myself that I am not the norm. This is not the standard in which we should be, you know, striving towards,
or holding other people accountable
to. Just because I'm able to do. One day I actually wrote down everything I did in a day.
I've done this.
Just to, and I came across it just a couple days ago because I was going through some notes, and it's just like, oh my gosh, you know. But I shouldn't expect other people to live in that space. So,
I am like that too. It's the more the better. And you know what? Now that you bring that up, and you had talked about having a chaotic sort of personality, I think that helps that, because if you are tasked legitimately to complete so many things, see, are you getting excited about this? Me too, because it's like, I only have 3 hours, and what do you want me to do? Instantly, it's like, I know, you know what, I'll do that in 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I'll be coming back here with 15 minutes. Because it's that seek the challenge thing, and I love that too. And sometimes I just will write down. In COVID, I did this all the time. Okay, I'm gonna get all of this done by 6 o'clock. Because that was like so rewarding and just fed my personality. Plus, there were so many bodies in the house doing their own thing. So there's gonna be interruptions and So I understand that, but it's very difficult. That's not the average mindset, you know, and it's not a better mindset. It's just a different mindset. But to, I mean, so, even with kids too, I'm like, I feel like, what did you do?
What did you do today?
Or if somebody's really laying around. I don't lay around. So it's like, well, why are you, I feel like you've been doing that for 20 minutes. Like, I could come up with some stuff. My kids love that, of course. But so it's hard.
It is hard. And I've actually, that is a big adjustment for me, you know, where I just have to let them lay in their beds.
I know.
And just let them, you know, and some of the natural consequences of those actions. I mean, and that's taken me, and I'm still working on that. And I'll probably continuously have to work on that, is the, you know, not trying to control. Because I can see, you know,
of course,
5 miles down the road, but we have to let them fail sometimes. And actually deal with the consequences themselves. Otherwise, they're not going to figure it out.
No.
So
they'll run into something big down the road and they won't have the skills.
Yeah.
They won't have experienced something prior to that wasn't so critical maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I tell the kids all the time, I want you to make as many mistakes as you possibly can while you live here. And that way I'm at least here
Yes.
to oversee a little bit. And it is, interesting as you start parenting a teenager, and there comes a certain point where I'm not saying your work is done, but it's kind of like you've done as much as you can, and you take on this consultant
You kind of
role.
got to see, like, did it work?
Yeah, absolutely.
While they're still there.
Yeah, and I was listening to this other podcast about, you're getting them ready to fly, into the real world. And so, right around 15, 16, you got to start treating them like adults and, letting them kind of do those sort of things because at least you're there
Right.
to help kind of manage through. But yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is like have them to be high functioning adults in the real world and
Positive contributors.
Yeah. We've been doing that since the day they were born, which is, yeah.
That is a tough transition.
Yeah.
I always wanted to like sneak in and put a parachute on.
Yeah.
It's like you need to fly, but just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that is hard. So my oldest, she was always so naturally an adult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Love it. You know this. And then my next daughter, she's been driving now for a year.
Yeah.
But man, for both of them when they got their license, I think that hands down is just maybe the hardest.
Yeah.
Because it's not that you don't trust them. It's just every scenario in the world that now they're subjected to, and variables you have zero control over. And I still say, drive safe, and they'll be like, it's not me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Be aware of other people not
Yeah.
paying attention or something.
I don't know, man. Aspen, she's got her temps, and
You're just on the cusp of that.
Yeah, but she's a little too confident behind the wheel.
Oh, yeah. Ooh. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, but I also have to, remind myself of, she's watching my every move when I'm driving.
Yeah.
And that's made me adjust. And, I don't look at my phone. I don't, I'm eyes on the road. Yeah. 10 and 2, I think it's 11 and 3 now.
Yeah, they adjusted.
Yeah. But yeah, and after I remind my husband of that all the time, she's watching you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if someone says they're uncomfortable in your car, you got to change.
Especially if it's your child. It's like, but that's the other thing, when you said when you become a mom and then everything about you comes to the surface.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about kids is they tell you.
Oh, yeah.
They act it out, or they tell you.
Yeah.
You become very self-aware.
Yeah. Yeah.
As an adult.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and my kids are definitely not afraid to tell me where I'm, not meeting the expectations.
And then you're like, this is the best.
Yeah, this is cool.
This is awesome.
Yeah. Actually, I think I remember the thought that I was having. I don't know if you've heard Sonda Rhimes. She wrote Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
And,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Many great shows.
Yeah, and she did. And I don't know if it was a commencement speech. I can't remember exactly what type of speech it was, but she was talking about the balance with kids and working. I mean, obviously, my career doesn't compare to that. And she, but it doesn't matter.
But it does. I mean, it does and it doesn't.
She talked about how, if you see me making my kids' Halloween costumes, that means that I'm not meeting a deadline at work. And if you see me traveling for a premiere, that means I'm not doing bedtime at home. And so, I'm not doing it all. Something has to drop in order for me to be able to do all of this.
Right.
And so I think about that all the time, that, again, it's the projection or what, people see on the surface, but there's so much more going on, and there's no way that anyone can do it all.
No.
Or, you know, something doesn't drop in order to be able to do something else.
You can't do it all 100%.
Yeah.
You can't be there 100% for
Yep.
everything. And if you were there 100% for one thing, so much of yourself wouldn't be developed.
Yeah.
You know? There's
Yeah.
just so much opportunity, and you're not going to do it all right.
Yeah.
But that's the whole journey of living.
Yeah.
Is, you know, trial and error and having a new adventure, and you're teaching your kids those things too if you can do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, you know, where you're at, you know, in society or anything. You can have a new adventure at any stage in any situation.
Yeah.
It doesn't always look like an adventure, sort of, maybe
Yeah.
typically, but
Well, I love reading about, you know, the individuals that have, you know, started their career at 40 or 50 or, you know, made a big switch in their life or didn't get this opportunity until they were later in life. And it just really, you know, there's just so much more. And it's this constant evolution of, you know, just being a better version of yourself every day and every chance that you can. And that there's continues to be opportunity. Like you hit this wall, then all right, what's next? So yeah, and and I think part of having a career and you know, working through those obstacles, having my kids see, you know, what I've had to do to build my career and how hard I have worked, and you know, the lessons that they're learning. You
Definitely.
know, and being able to look at their mom and say, holy crap, I mean, she's worked really hard at what she's done to make this life for us. I mean, and in fact, Aspen said to me, she's like, Mom, I don't think I could work as hard as you do. I just don't think I could.
you're like, what is the lesson? I'm holding you to this standard.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's
But
okay.
the other part of that is they've been part of that story.
Yeah.
So you worked really hard, but they also had to work hard.
Yeah.
It just wasn't framed up the same, you know, but they also had to adjust, and they also had to learn about these things. And so there's a lot of growth there.
Yeah. I love the challenge. I love work. I love to work.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's for me, like, I'm really glad that I get to show my kids that
Yes.
this is the mom that they see. And that's important to me. Now there's, lots of different careers, staying at home, working in the home, making stickers, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's all relative, but to me and my values,
Yeah.
I'm really, I love that my kids get to see me be a strong, independent woman, because that is extraordinarily important. And it's really neat to see and hear my son, the way that he talks about women,
Yeah.
and the way that he, protects women, or his view on equality, or that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Message received from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that comes too, it's not just demonstrating what that's like to be strong and independent, but all of that starts too with the relationship you build with your kids, loving them and folding them in, and still pursuing your own thing, which I think is, that's really this dichotomy that's challenging, for women who become parents.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think, I was saying before, but at the end of the day, parenting is just incredibly, it is very challenging. And I don't want it to, seem like I definitely don't have any answers.
After all these years.
Yeah. But it is, because I think there's a quote about your heart living on the outside of your body. The amount of space in your brain or mind during the day is, thinking about them and making sure that, okay, and the surface things, lunch, do they have money in their account? Do they blah, 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 blah? Do they have their wrestling shoes? Do they have their backpack? And then you get back into the flow of work, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no,
Do they have a ride?
Do they have
Like,
yes.
yeah.
Do they have a
Do
ride? Yeah. Do they have a snack?
Where are they? Like sometimes too, you're caught up in, some task that it's like, where are my kids?
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah.
Whose house are they at?
Yeah.
Like, did I set that up? What day is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Chaotic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then add in doctor's appointments and all those things that are just it's just constant. But yeah, and from I've changed so much as a human, kind of what I talked about. I mean, it's been a journey. I mean, and a mental health journey for me. Kind of figuring out of how I brought that masking into my parenting, but I was doing a lot of that growing up and, middle school, high school. We all do it to a degree. I think it's the only way you survive. But, it's taken me to get to this point where I realized how much I felt like I didn't fit in, and I knew I was different, and I knew this high functioning and all of these, but makes you very different when you're, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. I remember in 6th grade pretending I couldn't read well when I had to read out loud in front of the class.
Interesting.
Because I didn't want everybody.
You didn't want to stand out.
I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want people to know how smart I was. So I would stumble on words and things like that intentionally. I got into a lot of trouble in 6th grade. I mean, just behaviorally. And looking at it now, I mean, so much of it was just because I had all of this going on inside of me, and it was just how it came out. And that's been so one thing I've realized I've done is projected that onto both of my kids, feeling like, okay, when is that going to happen to them?
Do they have that trait?
Yeah. And, it's like, I'm constantly like, oh, is it going to happen here? Is that what they're doing here?
Yeah.
It's just so hard not to do that, not to project your own experience onto them. But I think, because of the language we use in our house and the way that we talk about things in our house, I think we have a better chance of a lot of that maybe not happening, just because there's a lot of verbalization of feelings, feeling weird, feeling different, a lot of just verbalizing how we're feeling about things, how our body feels about certain things. I think that helps not have to shove so much down.
Right. Or try to make it something it's not.
And make it something it's not. Yeah. Or behave, it comes out in behavior. Because I always say, dress the root, not the behavior. My kids get so sick of that. But but that's what, you can't ever address the behavior. I mean, not ever, but there's a root. There's a reason why someone
it's way more efficient to go to the root.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah.
Because then you're not constantly revisiting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't always work, and you do have to revisit that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I'm helping them. I think be more, and I think the way that they're growing up is so different than we did.
For sure.
There's just so much more awareness on
and access to things.
Yes, access.
We had such limited access.
Yeah.
That's why the way school was set up worked so much, because the authority who knew the things was at the front of the room.
Yeah.
Now the teacher, that is such a noble job, but the teacher is not the person who knows everything anymore. They have access to that. So that's a huge challenge. But so we were limited for what we had access to.
Yep. And our parents were even more limited.
Yes.
And, I grew up with both my parents working, and virtual working at home. That wasn't even a glimmer in anybody's eye at that point.
I don't think, maybe people didn't even want to. They kind of wanted to be at,
at an office. Yeah. But you say the access, that brings up the whole, the devices, and that is certainly another huge challenge. And I spend way more time thinking about that than I probably should. And I just, I tell the kids all the time, we have an entire generation of parents that we have no idea what we're doing. in regards to device. Like, we don't know.
We're growing with them
Yeah.
about it.
We don't know the right thing. We don't know the answer. We don't know how much is too little or too much or just right, or how many restrictions we should have. And, you know, obviously we'd have to figure out what's best for our family, but I don't know what that is.
Right. There's the guidance is,
Yeah.
you know, we need guidance too sometimes.
Yeah.
And we're just sort of figuring that out,
Right.
stumbling through it.
Yeah.
I feel like, too.
Well, because then, you know, I feel like there's times where I'm more liberal about it, and then then the comparison comes in. Then you hear another parent, it's like, well, I only allow an hour, and you know, their phone shuts down, and you know, I'm like, oh crap, am I doing it wrong?
Yeah.
Should I be doing that too? You know, and I go through that a lot of like, oh shoot, did I miss that? Is that something I should be applying to our family?
I know, it's so hard.
Yeah, and you know, I think so. Aspen is kind of the same as your oldest. I mean, she's always been mature.
Yes.
Yeah, and an adult.
She's so great.
Yes. Very reasonable.
Mature.
Really, yeah. Yeah.
I remember even when she's little,
Yes.
you can just have a conversation with her.
Yeah.
You don't have to really adjust. You know?
Right. Yeah. And she continues to be that way. And you know, we had struggles with the phone and you know, things like that. But you know, I finally I've taken all the restrictions off of her phone. You know, I don't, unless it's been almost a year since I've looked at her phone, where I would, you know, I do it a lot more with Ryder than you have to. But yeah, I've kind of just.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
giving the keys to the car, like
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
out
not
of
going
the
to.
nest, but not really.
Yeah. I'm not going to be there with you at college to say, okay,
Right.
time to turn off TikTok. You know,
You're still controlling it from home.
Yeah.
Your phone will shut down now. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I've just had to trust her. And I actually overheard her tell Ryder is, let mom look at your phone as much as she wants right now, because someday she'll stop. I promise.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is a certain point that is like, okay, I've done as much as I can.
Well, and leading up to that too, and just touching on some other things that you said, so much of doing that and getting to the point where you're just like, look, you have to learn how to do this on your own.
Yeah.
I'll be here if you run into something. So much of that is transparency too. So you talked about junior high, like behavior. I mean, those were probably my roughest years as well. And I tell my kids about the things that I did. I didn't really do anything then I couldn't tell them about, but you know, I wasn't always kind to people, and they're just like, Mom, you know, and I'm not proud of that, but it put me on the other side too. If anyone would ever pick on them or something, I was sort of hyper vigilant about that. Because I would say, in the mind of a bully, this is what they're thinking. You can't, you know, behave that way, or and sort of, I give a lot of information all of the time, try to over prepare, and just be transparent about things. And they get tired of it. It's okay if they do. But you know, we talked about, I used to call these little family meetings during COVID. We'd be sitting there, and then I would just bring up a topic, and I'd say, like, today we're talking about beer. You know, the kids are like so young. And then I'd say, like, what do you know about it? And they're just like, you know, I wasn't drinking, so you know, we weren't like the COVID have wine or beer at night. It was just like, I got a lot of lists to do here. But you know, and just in their young brains, like, what did they know about it? You know, and as they got older, I would bring it up and say, like, when will you start drinking beer? I'm like, what? But just talking about those things, and as they get older too, like, when did I you know, first have a beer or something like that? And what is my perspective on that now versus how maybe fun that was, but also did it do me any favors, you know, and talk to them about that. And I think that transparency and just saying, like, I was a real person at your age. These are things I did, they did or didn't work. But your point about the phones too, like, that's so overwhelming, and it's a little bit frightening. I mean, they have access to the entire world in their hand. That also has access to them to a certain degree. But just talking too about when they run into some event that happens that is undesirable for them. You know,
Yeah.
they feel sad or they feel hurt because of something someone said. And
Yeah. Well, and I mean, all of the, social media and all of these different sites are created to make you addicted.
Of course.
That's the whole point, is to keep you on it. And so, that's kind of the way I've had to frame it with the kids a little bit, which I went a little overboard with Ryder.
Really?
Yeah, because and one day he had a meltdown and was like, "I'm an addict." Okay, that's okay.
Message received. Again.
Let's pull that back a little bit.
That's so funny. But for him to realize that himself. That's so funny.
Yeah. And we do periodically with him, we'll do, a detox where we just like,
it's got to go.
It's got to go for a week, 2 weeks, and we need a break. And he he does, in the beginning, but it is tough. But then, he has expressed that he appreciates it, but is more than happy to get back on it.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing. I think unless there's an alternative activity, phone. Unless there's, some engagement with a human live person, phone.
Yeah.
And there's not any more, and I'm not saying in general, I mean, there are many children who probably do this, but it's not, I'm going to go do a Lego in idle time. I might say, there's a Lego you can work on. And prompt, also, you can't have your iPad.
Yeah.
Well, now I'll do the Lego,
Yes.
Yeah. But there's even those moments where it's like them mentally disconnecting from that world they've been in.
Yeah.
There's sort of this like uncomfortable angst and
a
little bit of fit throwing or something.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, okay, you can do that. When you're done, you can do the Lego.
Yeah.
And then eventually go over there. But it's like,
Yeah. But no, you're exactly right. And I find myself so often, it's like, find something to do.
Yeah. We do say that.
Yeah.
And then I think kids don't know how to find something to do because they didn't.
Yeah.
If our parents said that to, we weren't even around. We're like, wait, do we have to be in the house?
Yeah.
And they're like, we were gone.
Oh, yeah.
Unless it was like raining, maybe,
Yeah.
and they'd say, find something to do. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm bored.
Right. Right.
But you don't ever have to be bored now.
Yeah. No, and
It's
that's
just
the thing.
stimulate,
You never have to
constantly
be bored.
stimulate.
You're exactly right. Well, and it's funny because I'll be like, go watch a show. Like that's a
Find something to do. Not on your iPad, but the TV.
Yeah, you can watch a TV
Because the TV
show.
is what I did when I was little.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot to navigate. And I think with Aspen, she had a real life experience when it came to something that we did, and she saw the behavior of a person in an event that we were doing.
Okay.
And then she saw what was portrayed on social media, and they didn't match. And that was such a ding for her.
Yeah.
Where I really don't worry about, and she only has Instagram. Not that she'd want to be on Facebook anyways, but
that's embarrassing.
Oh
for
yeah,
some kids that are
yeah.
young. I've been told.
Yeah, that's just not the thing. So I guess I say she only has Instagram, but and she has got TikTok and all the other stuff. So what am I saying? But anyways, she and I do talk about reality versus what's put on there, and that has stuck with her so much. Where she's like, Mom, that's not. I take everything for face value, and so I really don't have a ton of concern about her being on those things.
Sure. Seems like she has more of an objective kind of.
Yeah, like she gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she actually tried to use that logic with me to get a TV in her room, because that's just like a hard no in our house.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. I'm like, it just leads to problems. You're going to end up sleeping with it on, and sleeping problems. Yeah. And and the research shows.
I love that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They love when I bring up.
That posting what doesn't match.
Yeah.
I remember being at my sister-in-law's, and we were in her backyard, and the sun was coming from a perfect angle, and one of the kids went by. She has a big wooden fence.
Yeah.
And one of the kids went by, and I saw their shadow, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool idea. Gave myself credit for a cool idea for a family photo. So I'm like, okay, just interrupt everyone what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because I had this idea. And I'm like, everybody get over by the fence. We're going to take a picture. Like choreographing this and getting annoyed that like.
Yeah. They don't want to do it, or they're like,
what? This is a fantastic, this is going to be so cool. So everybody's coming over and then I was like, okay, now get your, I needed this. And I remember being like, if you don't, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh. So we posted this, what I thought was a cool picture.
Yeah.
And anytime I see it, I'm like, I was unhinged. The family doesn't think that was like the best photo ever because they're getting like
yelled
at
to
line up in order. And all, so.
Yeah. And that's
so real.
It is so, I mean, and we have to remember like and I, you know, I'm guilty of it too, putting
of course
the best memories on there. I mean, I think for me anymore, I use Facebook as like a memory keeper, you know.
For sure. Once we learned they would remind us we did something.
Then
But not from too long ago. So like, what was I?
Yeah, but I do love the, you know, the pictures of the kids when they're little.
Don't you always want to send them out to other people? Like, they're so cute.
And they don't care.
Yeah. Just please me and just react.
Yeah. So, but we're definitely in a struggle with Ryder, my son. We're definitely struggling with the whole amount of screen time and reminders and, you know, all those things. And he gets so easily distracted by it. You know, it's like he went to go put on his shoes and then all of a sudden it's 20 minutes later and he's watching, you know.
Not his shoes.
And we had to get rid of YouTube, like on the TV and on his phone, because that is just.
You can't stop.
No.
Yeah.
And I didn't know.
On there, it's like.
Yeah.
Not that it's bad, but it's just you get bad. Like somebody's family is like, look what we do all the time, and then you're like, is it?
Yeah. Again, it's the
just the minutia.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So we're trying to figure that, and I feel like we are a lot more. Well, because then I have to enforce the rule, and so that's
you're not trying to give yourself.
Well, and that's a huge thing.
Yes.
You have to really assess if you're able to follow through on that rule or not, and. I mean, like chore charts and, you know, all of those things in theory sound great, but I can't keep up with that or I don't want to.
Right.
I really don't want to. And so we've just had to learn different systems.
Yeah. Or different consequences. So it's like, I'm not trying to give myself a consequence because you didn't do what you were supposed to.
Exactly.
Don't put me in that position, you know, and everything revolving a screen is that. And then if you say no, you can't have that then it's like, I'm bored. I don't know how to find something. Mom. Like, I'm trying to get this done. You need to have a consequence. I don't want the consequence. It is just, it's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't say come talk to me.
Your punishment is no screen and no this.
So it is. We're, like I said, we're evolving, we're learning, we're trying to figure it out. My hope is that, you know, this generation, because they've been exposed to it their entire life, maybe they're the ones that go on, you know, to college and it's just not appealing to them or wherever they, you know, as they become adults, that's just not appealing to them because they've had so much access to it and it's not, I don't know. That's my hope.
Yeah. Maybe it's not so novel. It's just like part of your existence. And I think we're dealing with, we remember before, now this is after. We're constantly like, I want my kids to have, there was a time when I was so excited during COVID because my kids went all the way back past the lots behind our house and they were playing in the woods. They weren't woods. It was like a line of trees by a stream. You could see them. But anyway, I was just sort of like looking out the window and I thought to myself, this is what I used to do. So they all come back and they're like, I have a tick. And I'm like, oh, ruined. You know, they're like, we're never doing that again. We got bugs. Like, so,
I'm dirty.
It worked for like, I was hopeful for a minute. So we remember before and after. That's why we're always on them. Like, you know, when I was little, like you couldn't find me. I'd be on my bike. And like, they're like, that is,
why?
you're so old. And
Yeah, although Ryder did go through that. This summer he rode his bike a ton. He'd pop in his AirPods and he loves music. So he would go on, an hour bike ride and just explore. And so he did go through that.
And some of that is if there's an activity, they'll want to maybe do that. But if there's no activity, it's screens.
Yeah. So anyways,
that's navigate.
It really is. And as we're talking about parenting, I just feel like that is something that's got to talk about because it's, And I was the mom, right? Of course. I was, Aspen didn't watch TV till she was 2, And
this is your control face.
Yeah. Oh, and I'd brag about it. Oh, she doesn't watch TV. Oh, good Lord.
Some people are like, what did you do all the time?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times when kids are that little too, they're not always watching the TV. Some people just put it on. But it's like, my kid is going to be more balanced, going to be healthier, going to be... I mean, unless you're doing the research and reading the studies on that,
it's hard to tell.
Are your kids loved? Are their basic needs met?
Exactly.
Well, if you can do that and still be your person and, not becoming frayed at the edges all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think that some of this is, we're talking about privilege, we have the privilege to worry about the effect of screens on our children's brains and how much and how little that they can have of their 10 devices that they have in their warm, cushy home.
Right.
And I don't mean to go down that road, but it is. I mean, it is a privilege to be able to even think about some of these things.
You're right.
And I have to remind myself of that too.
Yes.
I want to constantly strive to be better and not intentionally just let things just off the rails.
Right.
And it's not gonna destroy my kids' lives if they are on their screens more than the house next door. So
right.
Yeah.
It's better not to compare.
Yeah, and I think this is like the 4th or 5th time that's come up is that comparison. And I think that is so hard. And especially, with social media with us, seeing I just had that up.
That's okay.
Seeing what everybody else is doing or what you think that they're doing, man, can just make you spiral. And if it's not social media, it's just, like I said, listening to other people about their rules on X, Y, and Z, and suddenly thinking that that's something that I need to do, and taking a step back and that's not our family. We don't need to be doing that.
And we've made this point several times: is you don't know the story. You don't know all the pieces. So you're taking one incident, one snapshot, and trying to now alter what you're going to do with your entire family because you saw something. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be food for thought, and am I bouncing this against some other opportunity or some other idea? Okay, but to do that and then change the trajectory of what you already have going on because someone else made a decision to do something else. If you're doing that all the time, then how is that consistent in your family? And that's so much work for you as the parent. And so it's just better not. I don't think comparison is the answer. I think, looking at things objectively and thinking, could that be a resource? Is that something that's going to help me? Is that something that's going to advance what I have going on here? Let me vet that out before I just go making some decision to alter it forever.
And I think that, exactly right. That's working for them, and they look like they're doing great. They're thriving over there.
They have a great shadow picture on their Facebook. So, there's so much. I feel like we could
be here for a long time.
And I feel like I should see you more because this is so good.
Agreed.
And I learned so much about you today that I didn't know, and this is so fun. So I appreciate you coming on here.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's wonderful.
And you can always come back. We'll do more. Maybe we should do a year out revisit. We'll see what you've changed based on what you've seen. But I really appreciate you coming and being a guest. Anything else you want to say? Any last minute things? I mean, you've said so many valuable things I think people can take from this today, but anything that we didn't touch on?
Yeah. I think one thing I try to remember all the time is, I can't remember where I read this, but it's, something as a parent, you're gonna mess up 70%, or I think it's 70% of the time, and 100% of the time it's about the recovery. So only 30% of the time you're gonna get it right, and then the rest of the time is it's all about how you recover. It's all about how you address, if you yelled and you didn't want to, or you said something you shouldn't have, or the morning just didn't go the way you imagined it to go, or whatever the case may be. I mean, those are pretty vanilla things, but being able to come back and recover is huge, and that's something I feel like I do well as a parent. Is I am very quick to, and not to just, again, be a doormat or apologize or shame myself, but I'm very quick to take accountability for my actions in the situation. And a lot of times I do try to, with the reframe of, that did not go the way I wanted it to. If I could do that again, this is what I would have done. And I'm going to try in the future, to do that. And I think it means so much, not to kids, to anybody, but specifically to kids, to hear you take accountability for yourself. And then also this repair, making it safe again, and giving them an understanding of what happened, and it's not their fault, or it's not because there's a big rupture in our relationship. And one thing I say a lot I've never had a 15-year-old before. I have no.
Yeah, you're the first time mom of a 15-year-old.
Yeah. And so I'm learning. I am learning, and I'm doing my best to get up to speed. But I'm gonna stumble.
I think that's important and valuable for the kids to hear too. Is you're not a professional at this yet. You're learning. You're becoming this mom of a 15-year-old, just like they're growing too. Yeah.
And I think the last thing is just, I think don't be afraid to show emotion to your kids. I think it's okay to cry. It's okay to show them when you're frustrated, when you're mad, and, naming it, showing, telling them why. I think, helping them see you be a whole, real person is just, it's just, for them, that then gives them permission to be a whole, real person as well, with the multitude of emotions. And, I think that has been really important with my relationship with my kids, because they see my emotion, and they understand how important that is. So I think those would be the two last, my parting thoughts.
I appreciate that. It's taken me a long time to, I've talked about this on the show too. Like, I'm not a public crier.
Yeah.
And I'm also not a private in the family crier. So I've really learned from my kids that that's okay to, I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that for like your whole life, and then suddenly I don't know what anyone would do, but I've learned so much from them about emotion and about feeling that now, and that being okay. And then, man, you really can move on from that a lot more quickly.
Yeah.
And it makes you okay to be a person that emotes. So I appreciate those thoughts.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it's the permission for them to be able to feel.
Yeah, then it allows them to be that whole person.
Yeah.
So still learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And for everyone else, make sure you keep your own perspective, but don't be afraid to step into somebody else's like we have today. Be resilient, keep showing up. Kristle talked about the repair, and that's all part of resilience. So knowing you're going to come out on the other side, but taking time to think about and work through what has happened, and having some grace for yourself, and pursue, keep getting up and getting after those challenges. The show really is a support for moms. So if you're feeling alone, you're really part of a group of about 2 billion people, and we're here to support you. So thank you so much.